The Sega Saturn has a bit of a reputation for just being way too expensive to collect for today. We take a look at some of these high-priced games and we just think it's not worth it, it's never gonna happen. But I'm here to tell you that that is not true. I think this is a great time to pick up a Sega Saturn, and I'm gonna prove it to you in this video. I want to give a quick shout out to Pixel Bros Gamers for inspiring this video. He made a really cool video the other day about North American Sega Saturn games that are still affordable. These are games that are kind of about the same price that you would pay for a new current gen game. But that got me thinking, being the cheapskate that I am, or the frugal fellow that I am, if there are still some affordable North American Sega Saturn games, then surely there must be a ton of affordable imports, right? Yes, there are. There are tons of great Japanese Saturn games that are still very affordable and very worth importing. These are games that are easy to play even if you don't know the language, and a lot of them are like under $20. I'm going to share about 30 of them with you in this video. But before we dive into the games, let's just talk about hardware and other options for a moment. If you're gonna play Saturn games, you need a Saturn console, right? Luckily, there is an abundance of Japanese Saturn consoles available on eBay. There's a lot of them in very good condition that you can get for under $100. If you want to pay a little bit more, maybe you can get an extra controller or a few games bundled with it. Just take a good look at the pictures, make sure the seller is reputable, read the descriptions. There's plenty to choose from. And if you want to get extra controllers, this is really cool. You can actually buy a brand new official Sega licensed Saturn controller from Retrobit. They have both wired and wireless options. You can find them on Amazon or on eBay. I got a wired one for under 20 bucks, brand new on eBay. Just know that there are some versions for the Saturn console and there are some versions for USB output, so make sure you're getting the right one. But this is awesome, you know, you don't have to hunt down an old vintage controller and just hope that it works. You can get something brand new with that Sega stamp of approval on it, and Retrobit is a good company. I can speak from experience, I've used their products before. It's good stuff. Lastly, you might want to pick up one of these Action Replay Plus cards. It goes into the cartridge slot of the Saturn. The Saturn required a RAM cartridge, and there were two different versions, a 1 megabyte and a 4 megabyte version, and different games require different versions. This thing lets you play any game, and it gives you extra storage, and best of all, it allows you to play games of all regions. And then the icing on top is that you get those Action Replay cheats built in, but whether you use that part or not, it's great to be able to play games from any region and have all that storage space and compatibility with every game that you could possibly put in there. Okay, one more thing before we get into the games. It's very possible to play Saturn games without the games nowadays. There's this thing called the Satiator. And this is a bit of an initial investment. It's like $260, but it's a plug-and-play solution that has a micro SD card adapter, and you can just load all your ROMs onto it and play them on your Saturn console. So yes, it's expensive at $260, but theoretically you never have to buy any games ever again, and you could save a ton of money in the long run. However, if you're like me and you like having those original physical games in your collection, stay tuned because here are the games. My recommendations for affordable Japanese Saturn games. Let's start out with some fighting games. The Saturn has a ton of amazing fighting games. One of the biggest franchises on the Saturn was Virtua Fighter. There were actually 4 different Virtua Fighter games on the Saturn, and each of them can be found from about $10 to $15. You have Virtua Fighter 1, which was pretty much the first arcade game ported to the Saturn, but the visuals did not look very good. Look at those low poly models there. In fact, this was a common complaint at the time of its release, so Sega immediately went hard at work to come out with kind of a revamped definitive version that was titled Virtua Fighter Remix. It's the same basic game, however it has a new graphics engine. Those character models look a whole lot smoother. Some of the lighting effects are not as good as the original, but overall I think it looks a lot better. It's still a fun game to play today. I am not good at it, and I was trying to figure out the controls here, but classic game. Then you have Virtua Fighter 2, which is definitely a big step up from the first. It just feels a lot smoother, it seems to run very fast, and it just feels very fluid. It looks much nicer. The characters look even better than they did in Virtua Fighter Remix, in my opinion. But really it's more the backgrounds and environments that just have so much more detail. This game just has so much going for it. It has more characters, and it's just a classic, beloved fighting game, frequently on those lists of the best Saturn games ever. You can't go wrong with Virtua Fighter 2. But then there's possibly my favorite in the series, Virtua Fighter Kids. This is basically just Virtua Fighter 2, but the characters are all like super deformed chibi style. I think I like this one just because it's so different and so bizarre. It pretty much plays just like Virtua Fighter 2, it has all the same characters. They're just kind of cute and deformed, and I like it. Moving on, we have Fighting Vipers. This is another one you can get from like $10 to $15 on eBay. I love this game. I have this on Xbox 360 digitally, and I'm pretty sure it works on Xbox One and Xbox Series consoles as well. But for $10 to $15, you can't go wrong adding this to your collection physically on the Saturn. It plays somewhat similarly to Virtua Fighter, very simple to get into, hard to master, again just very fast and fluid. It's more beginner friendly, I would say. The characters are just very flashy and stylish too. You got this kid with a skateboard who can bash people with a skateboard, you have somebody else who's wearing rollerblades, and everybody has some sort of armor that can break off during the fight, and then they start taking more damage as their armor breaks off. You got some destructible environments. Very cool game, highly recommended, especially at that price. But if you want the best of both worlds, Virtua Fighter and Fighting Vipers, you could just go for Fighter's Megamix. This game can be found between $15 and $20, and it contains all the characters from Virtua Fighter 2, along with all the characters from Fighting Vipers, and a whole bunch of other characters from other Sega franchises. Huge roster of characters and just very satisfying gameplay. I remember seeing this in a magazine as a kid and just thinking it looked so amazing, and seeing all those characters. Some of them looked very out of place, like that bear, or there's a couple characters from Sonic the Fighters. Just a huge roster of characters, a very fun game, highly recommended, especially at that price. Next we have Last Bronx. This is another one that's a very highly regarded Saturn game. It's a game that kind of lived and died on the Saturn. I don't think there's any other way to play this game right now. You can tend to find this one for between $20 and $30. It's another 3D fighter. This one is more of a weapons-based fighter, and it's in an urban setting. It's very cool. I haven't spent a lot of time with it yet, but I'm liking what I'm playing so far. And check out this physical edition. It's a 2-disc set. It's got like multiple manuals. You got character moves and everything. I just love this artwork. I love seeing this stuff. I had to show it off. Alright, then we've got Street Fighter Zero and Street Fighter Zero 2. Known in the West as Street Fighter Alpha 1 and 2. Street Fighter Zero 1 and 2, it really needs no more introduction. Everybody knows these games. Everybody loves these games. They can be found for between $20 and $25. The second game is actually a little bit cheaper than the first one usually, and that's surprising because it's the better game. If you're just going to get one of them, go for the second one. It has a lot more characters, and it's just overall better in my opinion. It looks a little bit better and everything. There are other ways to play these games. They've been re-released many times over the years, most recently in the Street Fighter 30th Anniversary Collection, which you can get on modern consoles. But if you're a Saturn collector and a Street Fighter fan, you can't go wrong by adding these two games to your collection. And I can say the same for Vampire Hunter, Darkstalker's Revenge. This one's about $20. Another classic fighting game from Capcom. Again, this one is now in the Capcom Fighting Collection, which you can get on modern consoles. But for about $20, this is a great game to have in your Saturn collection also. The last fighting game here, I don't know if this is really a fighting game. It's kind of a 3D arena fighter / shooter. It's hard to classify it. It is Virtual On. This is a game where you get to pilot a giant robot with guns and swords and weapons in battle against other giant robots. This game actually supports a special twin stick controller, which can go anywhere from like $80 to $100. but it's not necessary. You can play it with just a regular Saturn controller, no problem. I was really having a hard time figuring out the controls here, but I was enjoying it all the same. I really was impressed by this game, and at $15 to $20, this is a no-brainer. Alright, let's check out some racing games, just a couple of racing games here. These again are games that are often on those best of Saturn lists, and I'm not entirely sure why, but they're fun games. So first up is Sega Rally. This is a really fun game. It's a port of a popular arcade game from the 90s, and it really does look and play very, very well. It runs fast and smoothly. It has 2-player split screen. My main complaint is just that there are only 4 tracks in the game. That doesn't seem like a lot of content to me. But it is fun to pick up and play for a few minutes at a time, and it is better than the next racing game, that's for sure. Daytona USA, which is another kind of beloved classic, but even when this game dropped, people were disappointed in the performance and the downgrade from its arcade version. The graphics just didn't look as good, especially the draw distance. That draw distance is really bad. You have constant pop in. It doesn't look too good, but it is still fun to play. It's very fast and smooth and just a good time to play for a few minutes. Again, this game only has 3 tracks. I complained about Sega Rally having 4 tracks. This game only has 3, and it does not have any multiplayer support, so those were some disappointing things at launch, and they're still disappointing today. However, there's fun to be had here, and you can pick it up for a little over 15 bucks. This is a classic game, beloved by a lot of people today. You can always count on finding some cheap puzzle games for any system. The Saturn's no exception. The most notable puzzle game on the platform is Baku Baku Animal. This is a unique one. It's only on the Saturn. It's a game where you're dropping different colored blocks, but it does have a little bit of a twist. Each colored block has a type of food on it, and then you'll get these corresponding animal blocks of the same color that, when connected to the food of their color, the animals will go and eat up those blocks, and that's how you clear out your blocks and you kind of attack your opponent. It's got a really strange kind of aesthetic to it. Very kind of unique game, but very fun as well, and simple, easy for anybody to pick up and play. I recommend this at about $20 to $25. You can't go wrong. There are a couple Puyo Puyo games on the Saturn as well. You have Puyo Puyo 2 and Puyo Puyo Sun, which is Puyo Puyo 3. These games are both about $15. I've never gotten good at Puyo Puyo. I've never really gotten the strategies down. I've never really gotten the hang of it that much, but I'm trying to learn, and I had a fun time playing these to capture the footage. Again, about $15 each. If you like Puyo Puyo, might as well pick these up. Another franchise I enjoy is Puzzle Bobble, and the Saturn has both Puzzle Bobble 2X and Puzzle Bobble 3. These games tend to run between about $20 and $30 each. Prices can be all over the place, and also, you know, they fluctuate all the time, usually for the worse over time, so by the time you're watching this video, what I'm saying here might not be accurate anymore, but it's worth looking them up. Puzzle Bobble, of course, you've probably played a game like this before. It's where you shoot these colored circles up at other colored circles. You're trying to knock things down and break groups of them, and it's very simple. It's very fun though. You can play multiplayer on these and compete against each other, and they're very cute games and simple to pick up and play. I enjoy them. Every console has to have Tetris, right? So I'm just going to mention Tetris real quick. You have a couple of Tetris games to choose from. One of them is terrible, and one of them is okay. The terrible one is Tetris S. This one you can find it for like $10 to $15, but it's that cheap for a reason. It's really hard to mess up a Tetris game, but somehow they managed to do it here. It is just bad. The controls are unresponsive. It feels so laggy and just unpolished and very, very bad. I'd rather play on the NES or the Game Boy or anything else than this version of Tetris. Avoid this one at all costs. But there is another more decent Tetris game on the Saturn. It's called Tetris Plus. It tends to go for like $30 to $40 though, so I don't know if I'd pay that much for it. Honestly, not for myself when I have so many other Tetris games on every other platform, and this one's not really anything that special. But if you find a good deal on it and you like Tetris, you might as well pick it up. Again, avoid Tetris S at all costs. Tetris Plus is pretty fun though. It's Tetris. It's what you expect. Alright, now moving on to a variety of other genres here. We have Clockwork Knight and Clockwork Knight 2. These are both some fun little action platform games where you play as this toy knight who's a little wind-up guy. He carries a sword that's actually a key, and you can kind of use this key to open certain things and crank up mechanical objects and fight enemies as well. It's a fun little game, pretty simple, not too much to talk about here other than I like its kind of unique toy setting. This is a series that, again, it lived and died on the Saturn. There's no other place to play these games. I think they're pretty fun, and I would definitely recommend checking them out in the $20 to $30 price range. Next up we have DecAthlete. Now this game reminds me of the track and field games from Konami back on the NES. I really liked those games growing up. You might love this game or hate it. I don't know. There's a lot of button mashing involved and timed button presses in order to complete the events. It has a number of events from 100-meter dash to the high jump to pole vaulting and shot put. All these sort of summer games you would see in the Olympics or something. It's a fun little game to play in short bursts and fun for multiplayer as well. Again, if you like games like track and field, then you might enjoy this one as well. It's only like $10 to $15 usually, so it's a pretty cheap pickup. We can't talk about the Saturn without talking about Nights into Dreams. Nights was basically the Saturn's mascot with a lack of a really strong Sonic game on the system. As you probably already know, Nights into Dreams is a game unlike any other. You play as this character Nights, who flies around collecting things and defeating bad guys. You're in this crazy dream world and it's all a little bit confusing, but it's still kind of a beautiful, dazzling, and different kind of game than anything else, and really a must-have for any Saturn owner. You can find it for about $20 to $30. There's also the Christmas Nights into Dreams special, which is more of a demo than anything, but it is a jolly little good time. It has a Christmas theme and it has about, I think, 1 or 2 levels on it. It's great to get you in that holiday spirit, and you can find it for under $20. I think about probably $15 or so. Definitely worth picking up both. Iconic games, must-haves on the system. Another great series on the Saturn was Panzer Dragoon. Now unfortunately, Panzer Dragoon Saga is not going to be on this list. You probably already know the North American version goes for about $1,000, and it's an RPG, so you probably don't even want to be playing it in a language you don't understand. The first 2 games in the series, however, Panzer Dragoon and Panzer Dragoon 2 Sawai, are both reasonably priced. They're in the $30 to $40 range. They're just kind of on-rails shooters. You fly around or ride around on these dragons and shoot at bad guys. Very beautiful games even today. The first game got a modern remaster on current platforms. I played it a little bit on the Switch and I honestly wasn't impressed. It had terrible loading times and it just didn't look that good. It didn't run that well. It was not fun. However, playing this original version on the Saturn, I enjoy it quite a lot. I think it's definitely worth picking up. It was a big deal at the time and it holds up pretty well today with its gameplay. You can get the first and second games for about $30 to $40 each. Maybe you can get them bundled together for a little bit cheaper. Every console needs a good Bomberman game, and Saturn Bomberman is said by many to be the best Bomberman game of all time. For the most part, it's just a typical average traditional Bomberman game. The big selling point here was that it could support up to 10 players on one console, assuming you have 2 multi-taps and 10 controllers, which I don't think a lot of people did, but it's a very cool feature nonetheless. Otherwise, yeah, it's your average 2D Bomberman game. You've got the single player arcade mode, and then you've got battle mode for as many people as you can handle. The only other notable things here are that you can ride around on dinosaurs in this game, and it features characters from other games like Bonk and Tengai Makyo, or Far East of Eden, so that's kinda cool as well. You can find Saturn Bomberman for around $30. Well worth it in my opinion. You might also come across Saturn Bomberman Fight. For about $30 to $40, this is a different kind of Bomberman game. It is much more chaotic and action oriented. You got these kind of wide open arenas for up to 4 players, and you can actually just run around and jump around and throw bombs and kick bombs, and it's really hectic. It feels like much more of just a crazy, chaotic party game, much more action oriented, and oh man, there's a lot going on. I didn't play it too much, but that's out there, and it's very interesting and might be fun to play with friends especially. Steamgear Mash is a game that I have never heard anybody talk about before. It's sort of an isometric action platform game. You control this little robot guy who can shoot at bad guys, and it can obtain different kinds of power-ups and abilities as you go on. I haven't played a ton of it, but I think it's actually pretty cool and impressive, and maybe a hidden gem. Everybody hates that term now, but I'll still use it sparingly. Yeah, Steamgear Mash. Currently you can find it for about $30. I do feel like this is one of those obscure games that just might go up in price over time though, so if you like the look of it, maybe pick it up sooner rather than later. Speaking of obscure games, I got one more for you. Jangu Rhythm. The price on this is all over the place, but I've seen it around the $30 range. This is pretty much a carbon copy clone of Parappa the Rapper, and I'm all for it. I love Parappa the Rapper. This game has a lot of charm of its own, catchy music, silly, colorful visuals and characters, and I've only played a bit of this as well, but I really like it. I love music and rhythm games, and I love Parappa, and yeah, we need more of those games, so here's another kind of hidden treasure. I've never heard anybody talk about this game. I barely found out that it existed recently, and I'm so glad I did because it's pretty fun. So those are most of the cheaper games I've come across so far on eBay. If you want to raise the prices up to about $40 to $50 or more, then of course you have more options. The more you want to go up in your budget, the more options you're going to have. In the $40 to $50 range, I do have my eyes set on a few games like Sonic R. This game is super janky, but it was Sonic's first real 3D game. And I remember seeing this and playing this at Toys R Us at a kiosk as a kid and just my mind being blown. It looked so amazing, going from the Sega Genesis at home to seeing this fully 3D Sonic game. It was fast, it was fun. Oh man, I wanted a Saturn so much just for this one game. Never got one growing up, and honestly it left my mind pretty soon, but man, I remember how impressed I was at the time. And yeah, Sonic R is a classic. Again, it controls a little weird, it hasn't aged that well, but man, it's still an iconic game and a kind of a special one in my heart. A game I always wanted so badly as a kid. Also in the 40 to 50 range is Dynamite Deka, known in the States as Die Hard Arcade. This one is just a really fun kind of action beat 'em up game. You play as this cop, you're beating up bad guys, picking up all kinds of weapons. All the levels are super short, it's super fast paced, just easy to pick up and play, and it's a really good time. And then last up in that 40 to 50 range, game that I've got my eye on is Darius Gaiden. I don't expect this one to stay at this price range for long because shoot 'em ups always go up in price. It seems anyways. It seems they get very expensive. And this is a really interesting one. It's a really fun game. It has a ton of stages because after each level, you get to choose the next level you want to go to. There are multiple routes and just a ton of different levels. So you'll have to play through the game many times in order to play through all of the levels. And it's got a really kind of unique setting. You have all these enemies that are like giant fish and insects and things, sort of robotic insects and fish, I should say. Very interesting setting. You'll have sort of water-based levels and levels that are in outer space and all kinds of stuff. Very fun, simple shmup. That doesn't mean it's easy. It starts out pretty easy, but it ramps up pretty quickly. It is one of the more forgiving games that I've played so far in the genre though, especially for these kind of older games. Highly recommend checking it out though if you're a fan of the genre, especially at that $40 to $50 price range because that is rare to get a classic shmup at that price. So there you go, those are over 30 games that are still very affordable and very much worth importing on the Saturn. Again, I think there's something for everybody here. We looked at a nice variety of games and this was just so much fun for me to make this video. I had a great time kind of exploring all these different games. And I'm just very happy to see that it is very possible to start collecting for the Saturn today, even without a ton of money. There's a lot of great games out there at great prices if you know where to look and if you're willing to go the import route. Then again, I know there's always emulation, which is how I captured this footage, by the way. But I enjoy collecting games when I can too. It's just always nice to have that physical media on your shelf and then that you can touch and feel and just play it the way it was meant to be played on that original hardware. And it's just a little bit of a different experience than emulating. And if you've been interested in collecting for the Saturn and you thought it was impossible, well, I hope this has inspired you to maybe change your mind and go for it. Let me know your thoughts, by the way, and if you have any other game recommendations that aren't crazily priced, I'd love to hear that as well. Anyways, thanks for watching today. Hope you enjoyed the video. I will see you next time. Take care.